Over there, yeah. Jim is going to speak to your delight. You don't have to hear me today. Isn't that wonderful? Say yes. That's great. Okay. But anyway, Jim and I have been friends for a long time. Jim came on staff with me in New England when we pastored up there as our youth director and stayed longer than I stayed. I left that church and Jim stayed up there. I left him behind and he had a great time, didn't you, Jim? And Jim's also a church planter. He's been pastoring for about 25 years, and he's planted a church in Indiana. He lives in Carmel, don't you? Carmel, Indiana. How many know where that is? Outside Indianapolis? Okay, good, a lot of you. But Jim's a great guy. He's a great speaker. I love him and his wife and have for years, and you're going to really enjoy this today. Come on, Jim, speak to us.
Thanks, Sam. Do I have you can hear me, right? Thank you for hosting and for letting me come this morning and speak. I was just so excited to be here. My wife, Cheryl, wave, Cheryl, higher, wave higher. She's the good-looking one of us, and so I want to make sure that you know who she is. And we were just so glad to be here. We flew in on Friday and spending some time with Tom and Gloria, and just really, really excited. I'm going to talk to you in just a couple of minutes from Mark chapter 1. So I don't know if you want to jump there ahead of me, go there on your iPhone or your tablet or whatever. Mark chapter 1, we're going to be there in a minute. And I want to communicate to you this morning what I view is behind the resurrection, the most shocking thing that Jesus ever did. And this is my opinion. But I want to share that with you in just a couple of minutes. So Mark chapter 1 is where I'll be if you want to go ahead. We've got some slides behind us, so you can follow along on the screen behind me if that's more convenient for you. I'm just really glad to be here, and I want to say a quick prayer, if you don't mind, and let's pray. And God, thank you so much for this beautiful day that we have. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here and to share you with these people. And everyone here is so generous and so friendly, and I love this church, and I love the pastor, and just so honored to be here. And I want to ask that for the next few minutes that you would meet with us and speak to our hearts, and that what's said would be something that you would say if you were here physically, and that we would hear from you and not from Jim Martinson. And I pray in Jesus' name, amen. So my wife and I were figuring out that 27 years ago, this weekend actually, we moved to New England, and this is when my wife met Tom and Gloria for the first time. And it was this weekend, 27 years ago. We got married right out of college and went on our honeymoon, and then we came back and packed our bags and drove out to Boston. And 27 years ago this weekend. And so I thought it was like really, kind of fitting that I got to spend some time with Tom and Gloria. And when I was in Bible college, way back when, I was really a nobody. I didn't hang out with the people that were in the in crowd. I didn't hang out with the people that were like most likely to succeed. My wife, Cheryl, made Who's Who in colleges and universities. You guys heard of this before? Who's Who in colleges and universities? My wife is a member of that, and so I'll prop her up a little bit. I made Who's He. Nobody knew who I was. It was like, who is this guy? What's he doing here? And, nobody knew what I was doing. And I remember my senior year of college going to one of the guys on staff whose job it was to help place people in ministries. And I went and sat across from him and said, hey, I'm going to graduate in a couple months, and can you help me? I'm looking for a place to go. And he kind of looked at me like, have I ever seen you before? And I spent 4 years in this place, and nobody knew who I was. And so graduated from college, and I'll never forget a couple of months after I graduated, as I was trying to figure out what God wanted me to do with my life, and I knew I wanted to pastor, and I knew I wanted to be in ministry, and I had traveled to a couple of different places and had candidated and tried to figure out where, what that was going to look like. And I was already engaged to my wife. We were going to get married in August, and I'll never forget the phone call that I got out of the blue from somebody I'd never met before. Now, I'm going to back up a second. I went to a Bible college, and every day we had chapel. And every day our college would fly in guys from all over the country to preach at chapel. So all through my 4 years of Bible college, I got to hear day after day after day after day, some guys stand up and preach the Bible. And, after a while, you're like, enough already. I can't handle it. And so by the time I graduated, I remember very few of them. I maybe 2 or 3. One of them I remember because he only spoke for 20 minutes. And I thought that was awesome, I've learned that as a preacher, the shorter you go, the bigger a hero you are to the people out there. And I remember that guy, Paul Henderson. I don't know if you know who he was. 20 minutes, and he was done. One of the only other people that I ever remembered speaking in college was Tom, your pastor. And I don't know how old you were at the time. This had been in the mid-'80s, and they flew him out, and I didn't know who he was, and I'd never been to New England. I didn't know if that was across the Atlantic Ocean or where that was. And he stood up in chapel and preached, and I remembered it because he's talking about how he moved out from Michigan and started a church, and how he was really went to a pagan at that time, was very a pagan area, and planted churches in areas where it was just impossible to plant churches. And he told stories about some of the battles that he fought and some of the obstacles that he and Gloria had to overcome. And for some reason, that just stuck with me, and I remember this. And so fast forward about 3 years, I get this phone call 2 months after I graduated from college, and I answer the phone, and hey, it's Tom Ward. And I'm like, whoa, hey, Tom Ward? Who? Really? The Tom Ward? The Tom Ward. And he said, yeah. He said, I heard you're looking for a place, and we're looking for a youth pastor, and how would you feel about, coming out here and talking and seeing if maybe this is the place for you? And I was incredulous, stunned, honored, shocked, all of that. I was nobody. And when Tom called me, it was like, you know what? And I flew out there and we talked, and he ended up, saying, come on out, I want to hire you. And what I got from that, from Tom and from Gloria both, was, Jim, we don't know you, but what we see in you is the potential to do what we're doing. And that, to me, was like the most affirmation that I'd ever had in my life up until that point. It was incredible. I see in you the potential to do what I'm doing. And from that time till this, like Tom said, he hired me and then he left. Thank you very much. I owe him one for that. But from that time to this, we stayed in touch, and Tom and Gloria both. You guys have been my heroes, and you guys have been, not in a weird way, but you guys have been up on a pedestal in my life. I follow you guys, I love you guys. And Tom will tell you, we talk all the time on the phone, and whenever I'm discouraged or whenever I have questions, whenever I don't know what to do, Tom's my mentor. And I admire Tom and Gloria both and their ministry, and Gloria, your writing ability and your ability to have an impact on pastors really all over the East Coast, really all over the nation, and your marriage. You've been married for 47 years, which is 47 years, and I was 2 when you got married, and wow, that's incredible. You guys are working on your 9th 7-year itch, I would seriously, if Tom called me tomorrow and said, hey, let's go, and you fill in the blank, I would probably drop everything and do it. That's how much he means to me. There's an ancient saying in Jewish culture. It goes like this: may you follow the rabbi so closely that you end up covered with the dust of his feet. And what that means is, when you decide to follow somebody, follow the person, right? And I just want to say, before I jump into the scripture in just a second, that you guys, I'm so glad for you that you guys have the honor of having a man and woman of God like Tom and Gloria to lead you and to be your pastors. And I hope I hope you know what you have. And if you don't know what you have, and usually the people closest to you, you're the ones that miss it. You have a world-class pastors. You have a world-class couple here to lead you. And I hope that you'll follow them. I hope that as he follows Jesus, and I'm not saying follow him like a cult or anything like that, and he would be the first to admit, follow me as I follow Jesus, of course, right? But I hope that you're following him. I hope that you're paying attention. I hope that you're listening, because I'm telling you, he and Gloria have spent decades doing what most pastors only dream of doing. And my prayer for you is this: may you follow them so closely that you end up covered with the dust of their feet. You know, following is kind of an interesting concept. We follow all kinds of people on our social media, right? You follow them on Twitter, you friend people on Facebook. It's very easy to follow somebody. You know, just pull out your iPhone or your phone or whatever and hit the follow button. Some of you follow sports teams, and I met earlier somebody who was a Yankees fan, and I'm a big Red Sox fan, and so, you know, I do know that revival needs to happen here somewhere because of that, but if it's a sports team that you have, you know, you follow them, and so, you know, you consider yourself a follower if you're a fan, and you follow a sports team, and some of you follow politics, you know, and we're in an election year, and wherever you are in that, you know, maybe you follow that a little bit more than other people do. And by the way, if you're following politics, then you're going to end up covered with mud, probably all over your body. This is pretty ugly, isn't it? But we follow people like that, right? And it's so easy to just push a button and follow somebody, and that's our view of what it means to follow somebody, right? I'm interested in what you have to say, and if you post something about your kids, I'm like, oh yeah, look at that, look at their kids, how they're growing up, and you post something about vacation, and you know, so I follow you because I'm interested, I want to hear what you have to say, and that's important to me. That's the follow button. And that's pretty common in our culture today. It's a lot more, you know, the word follow is a lot more, used a lot more now than it ever was when I was growing up, because of social media. We push the follow button. But here's the deal. Our commitment to following somebody is really only as strong as how quick it takes for us to unfollow that person. Because look, if I follow you on Facebook and you start posting like recipes, you know, recipes and like how to cook stuff all the time, that's all I'm ever getting, I'm probably going to unfollow you. You know, I love you maybe, but not that much. And you start posting how America is going to hell and how America is going down the tubes because of all the political stuff and all. I'm probably not going to be your friend anymore because, you know, that's just not who I am, right? You unfollow just as fast as you can follow. And some of you sports fans, you know what that's like, right? We're from Indianapolis, and so everyone's a Colts fan. And no, I'm not going to get into the fact that I'm a Patriots fan. Cheryl was all worried about what I was going to say up here. But Tom's a Patriots fan, and I'm following him. See? It's all good. But in Indianapolis, when Peyton Manning left, you were happy about that? Okay, so he went to Denver, right? I was stunned at how many Colt fans became Bronco fans. They weren't following the Colts, and they hit the unfollow button very quickly, right? It's so easy to hit the unfollow button because that's kind of who we are. And by the way, this carries over into our faith. It really does. And we say we're followers of Jesus, and I hope that you are. And if you're not this morning, I just want to say that, you know, there's nothing greater to give your life to than to follow the Rabbi Jesus Christ. And if you give your life to him and you say yes to him and you start to follow him, there's nothing greater than that. But here's the deal. We follow him like we follow people on social media, because as soon as something happens that we don't get, as soon as something happens that we don't appreciate, as soon as something happens in our lives, we lose our jobs or somebody gets sick and God doesn't heal them, we lose our faith and we hit that unfollow button so fast. And this is why we don't know what it means to pray. And this is why we church hop. We come for a while, and as soon as something, you know, isn't right, we're off to the next place because we hit the unfollow button so quickly, you know? And here's the reality. You only follow someone as strongly as whatever obstacle it would take for you to get you to unfollow. Did you ever wonder why in the Bible, as you read the biographies of Jesus, did you ever wonder why his disciples were so ready to drop everything to follow Jesus? Look at Mark chapter 1, if you don't mind. In Mark chapter 1, verse 16, Mark, by the way, was written by a guy named, can you guess? Mark. But here's what you might not know, and you probably know this, and I'm sure you know this, but Mark actually wrote for Peter, Simon Peter. So Simon Peter was advanced in age, and Mark was a young man who kind of grew up under Simon Peter's ministry. This is after the resurrection, after Jesus went back to heaven. And so Mark actually wrote Peter's recollections. Okay, so this is what Peter is remembering. And here's what it says in verse number 16. As Jesus walked beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon, and that's Simon Peter, by the way, so Peter's remembering this. He saw Simon and his brother Andrew casting a net into the lake, for they were what? They were fishermen. Not like you and I are fishermen. These guys were pros. This is what they did for a living. I said that too quickly. We're on the East Coast, so some of you might be professional fishermen. I have no idea. Where I live, nobody fishes for a living. We go to Red Lobster. All right, so he was a professional fisherman, right? Check it out. Come, follow me, Jesus said, and I will make you fishers of men. And here's the deal. They pushed the follow button. But here's what it looked like. At once, they left their nets and followed him. They dropped it all, and they said, okay, let's go. Did you ever wonder why they were so quick to do that? Check out the next verses. Verse 19. When he, that's Jesus, had gone a little farther, he saw James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John in a boat, preparing their nets, because, again, they were professional fishermen. Without delay, he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired men, and what? Followed him. Did you ever wonder why the disciples were so quick to follow Jesus? Now, you have to understand a little bit of Jewish history to get this, and so I'm going to walk you through this, all right? So if you grew up in Palestine, especially in Galilee at that time, and especially if you were male, and sometimes females went through some of this process, but mostly men, mostly boys. But when you were 5 years old, at age 5, you were expected to go to the synagogue, and you were expected to learn the Tanakh, which was the Hebrew scriptures. It was the law, the writings, and the prophets. And what you would do at age 5, and for the next 8 years is you would begin to memorize the Tanakh. By age 13, most Jewish boys could quote the entire Hebrew scriptures. They could quote them. And here's what would happen. At age 13, at the bar mitzvah, most boys would get a little tap on the shoulder from their rabbi in the synagogue. And most boys would get this message from their rabbi. Son, you did a pretty good job memorizing the Tanakh. But you know what? I think it would be better if you went home and learned the family business. And so most boys at age 13 at their bar mitzvah would go back to the family business and learn to become fishermen or tax collectors or bakers or whatever it is that they did, carpenters, right? Some boys, though, if you showed a really exceptional kind of promise, the rabbi would come to them and say, hey, I want to invite you to go on to another stage in your studies, in these rabbinical studies. And so these boys, a very small group of boys, from age 13 for the next 5 or 6, sometimes 6 or 7 years, would study what was called the yoke of Torah. And what that meant is they would take the Hebrew scriptures that they already memorized, and they would take the next 7 or 8 years and memorize and learn all of the accepted interpretations of those scriptures, right? So that by the time they turned 17 or 18 years of age, they not only knew the scriptures, but they also knew all of the sages' interpretations of these scriptures. When they turned 17 or 18, most of the boys at that age would get a tap on the shoulder from the rabbi. Son, it's been a long ride, and you've shown some really exceptional intellect, but the journey ends here. You need to go home. And you need to go learn the family business, and I hope, God bless you, but see you later. Most boys got that message. A very, 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 very small few would get this message, though. Son, I see exceptional potential in you, and I want to invite you to go on to the next stage. And here was the next stage. The next stage was for the young man to choose a rabbi to follow, to choose a rabbi. Now, you have to understand, this decision for this young man at age 17 or 18 to choose a rabbi to follow was a very important decision to make, because whatever rabbi you chose, that rabbi's interpretation of the scriptures, his yoke, Y-O-K-E, that yoke would be binding on that student for the rest of his life. And so you had to be very careful, and as some of you know, some of the more famous rabbis in Jewish history, Shammai, for example, was one of the famous rabbis back then in Jesus' time, before Jesus actually, and he interpreted the scriptures literally. There was the Rabbi Hillel, who who didn't interpret the scriptures literally, but he would interpret the scriptures according to the spirit of the law. And so he's a little more liberal maybe. Then you had guys that kind of fell in the middle, like Gamaliel, who was actually the Apostle Paul's rabbi, who the Apostle Paul chose as his rabbi. But whatever you chose, man, that was binding to you. You had to be careful who you chose, right? But what would happen is this young man would go to the rabbi, and whatever rabbi he chose, kind of like choosing a college or a university today. You know, you go to a college, university, and you fill out the application, and you send it in. You're like, I hope I get in, I hope I get in, I hope I get in, right? That's exactly what they would do. They'd go to the rabbi and say, can I follow you? Can I become one of your Talmudim disciples? Now, the rabbi also had a difficult decision to make. Because the rabbi would look at the young man and understand that this young man was going to carry on the rabbi's legacy. And so he was very, very choosy and very, very careful about who he chose. And if he did look at a young man, he would begin to grill him about the scriptures and about his interpretation, hoping to find somebody that the rabbi thought could become just like him. And that was the goal. And most boys could not find a rabbi that would accept them. Here's why. Because qualification came before the invitation. And if you didn't qualify, you didn't get invited. And the rabbi would look at you and say, you know what? You're a great kid and I like you and everything, but you're just not, you go find someone else. And most got rejected somewhere in the process because qualification came before invitation. But for just a very, very few more boys who would go to a rabbi and say, can I follow you? And that rabbi would grill them and quiz them and talk to them about the scriptures. For a very, very few of those, a rabbi would say two words that every Jewish boy in that culture was just dying to hear from a rabbi. And the two words are, follow me. Follow me. And here's what that meant. If a rabbi asked you to follow him, that was a great honor. And your parents are all proud. It'd be like being accepted into Harvard, or Yale or something. And wow, and they'd throw a party for you. And it was at that point that the parents would say, may you follow the rabbi so closely that you end up covered with the dust of his feet. That was the saying. And the young man would pack everything and drop everything and go and follow the rabbi for several years. And what that meant was he would go where the rabbi went. He would do what the rabbi did. He would learn everything he could so that he could become just like the rabbi. Now, I know you guys are racing ahead of me. Because here's the shocking part. Here's the shocking part. Check it out. I'm going to read this again. It won't be on the screen behind me, I don't think, but I want to read this again. Check this out. So Jesus walked beside the Sea of Galilee, and he saw Simon and his brother Andrew casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. So, ho. At what point, Simon Peter, did you get flushed out of the system? Were you unable to memorize the scriptures and you just weren't that good with your intellect? And so the rabbi said, you know what, you don't have what it takes. Go learn the family business. At what point, Andrew, did you get rejected from the system? At what point, Andrew, maybe it was, the whole second part, and you just couldn't learn the interpretation of the law. You memorized the scriptures, but you couldn't interpret it well, and so you got flushed out of the system. And then later on, James and John, who were also fishermen, and in Luke chapter 5, Levi, who was a port tax collector, right? At what point, Levi, did you get washed out of the system? Every one of these guys at some point had the dream of following a rabbi, but at some point they got rejected because they weren't qualified. At some point they didn't measure up, and so somebody said, you know what, go learn the family business because you'll have a better chance there than you will here. And here's the shocking part. This is the part that fires me up because I'm telling you, I am there. I am there, and I know a lot of you are as well. And this is not only the shocking part, and by the way, to me, underneath the resurrection, this is like the most attractive thing about following Jesus for me personally. So I'm pretty fired up about this. Here's the shocking part. Check it out. Jesus goes to them, and instead of them asking him, can I follow you? He says, hey, I want you to follow me. And they were like, really? I mean, I could just picture it. Really? We've already been flunked out of the system. We don't have what it takes to be like you. We don't know your interpretation of the law. There's no way we can do what you're doing. Really? They must have been incredulous. Really? You're calling me? You're calling me and inviting me to come follow you? Really? And so now can you see why they just dropped everything? And why their families probably would have said, yeah, man, drop everything. You got to go do this. This is an opportunity of a lifetime, right? Because look, friends, in our world, right, qualification always comes before the invitation. You don't make it into a college unless you qualify for it. That's why in high school, some of you in high school, I saw some young people in here, right? You're in high school and you're taking AP classes and you're doing extracurricular activities, hopefully of the good kind, right? The extracurricular activities that will get you into college, right? Because you're trying to make it into college, right? You have to qualify before the invitation comes, right? Your dream job, your career, whatever it is. You had to qualify before you ever got a call. And it'd be like, could you imagine a Wall Street executive walking down New York City and asking a hot dog vendor to come, hey, why don't you come be my apprentice? I want to teach you everything I know, without even knowing him? That's unheard of, right? Because in our world, qualification always comes before the invitation. And here's the deal. We spend our lives trying to qualify. And some of us are still, even as adults, trying to make up for the fact that we don't think our parents have accepted us. Right? And some of us, go through great lengths to put out this visible image just to feel accepted and qualified. You get an invitation to a dinner party, and if you're like, if you're like my wife, she, has 400 dresses and outfits and shoes and jewelry, and she's trying them all of them on before she ever goes to the dinner party, right? And you do the same thing, don't you? Not men, but God, well, if you do, I don't want to know if you're a man, you do that, but ladies, don't you do this, right? Why? Because you want to be accepted wherever it is that you're going, right? And we do this all the time because in our world, qualification always comes before the invitation. How many times have I asked somebody to come to my church? Hey, why don't you come to my church? I think you'd love it. And here's what they say. And Tom, I know you've heard this 1,000 times. Oh, you don't want me at your church. Oh, you don't want me at your church. And what are they saying? If you only knew who I am and what I've done and what I'm doing, you don't want me at your church. And here's what they're saying. I don't qualify for that invitation. Let me qualify first, like going to the gym and getting a gym membership, but before you ever go to the gym, you get in shape before you go to the gym. You guys are nodding at me because I know you've done this, right? Right? You don't want to go to the gym until you're in shape. Well, how weird is that? But that's how we are, right? We've been programmed to qualify before we can ever respond to an invitation. But here's the deal. Here's the deal. In Jesus' world, the invitation comes before qualification. And where'd my Bible go? There it is. I love this. Check it out. Come follow me, the invitation, and I will make you qualified. Come follow me. Decide to follow me first, and I'll make you a fishers of men. I'll make you qualified. And friends, that's shocking. It's shocking. The idea that the Son of God, through usually a man of God like a Tom Ward in your case, would come to you and say, come on, be a part of this thing. And you're thinking, you know what, there's no way in this world I should be a part of that thing until I get this straight and get that right and get this fixed and, heal that and, get all that dysfunction out of my, that's what you're thinking. And there's no way that I should respond to that. But the idea that the Son of God would come to me and invite me to follow him and invite me to say, you know what, I think you have what it takes to be like me. I think you can do what I do. In fact, you may even do greater things than I've done. Take my yoke on you, my interpretation of the scriptures, because you'll find that it's easy. Not easy to do, but easy to understand. You can do this. And the idea that the invitation would come before the qualification just blows my mind. And here's what Jesus did to these guys. He said, look, come follow me and I'll make you fishers of men, which is interesting to me. He didn't say, come follow me, I'll make you a rabbi. He didn't say, come follow me and I'll make you a Sunday school teacher. Come follow me, I'll make you a pastor of a church. Come follow me, I'll make you some religious, fanatic. He said, I'll make you a fisher. You're already doing that. You're already fishing. You already know that trade. But check it out. I want to make yourself into something larger than yourself. And you're saying, Jim, what kind of Indiana talk is that? The wording here is intentional. Because Jesus does not come to you and say, I want you to be exactly like Tom Ward or Gloria Ward. Jesus comes to you and says, I want you to be you, and I will make yourself and give you an opportunity for yourself to be a part of something bigger than yourself. And that's awesome. And so when Simon Peter said, you know what, I'm in, and Jesus taught him to go out and use what he knew about fishing to impact a life. And Peter never knew that, he'd spend 3 years with Jesus and watch him go to the cross and watch him be executed and be there after the resurrection. Peter didn't know that he was going to preach a great revival in Jerusalem. Peter didn't know that he was going to be crucified, tradition says, upside down for his faith. He knew none of that. He just knew that Jesus was inviting him to something bigger than himself, and he wanted in. Isn't that exciting? And friends, here's what I have to say today. Jesus is walking along the beach, and he catches your eye, and he looks at you, and he says, follow me. I know you don't qualify. It's okay. Follow me. I'll qualify you, but you got to follow me. And here's what that looks like, because how many of you ever seen Jesus literally walk up? Don't answer that, because I don't want to know how many of you. Is marijuana legal here in Delaware? No, I don't want to know. Jesus, you probably haven't seen Jesus himself walk up to you and ask you that question, but here's the deal. Probably someone like Tom Ward or Gloria Ward has walked up to you and said, hey, you know what? Follow me. Follow us. And they've walked into your office, and they've invited yourself to be part of something bigger than yourself. Or they've walked into your home, or they've walked into, your hobby or whatever it is, and they said, you know what, how would you like to use this to be part of something way bigger than yourself? And friends, that's how you find your purpose. And so Jesus is walking along the beach, and he catches your eye, and he says, will you follow me? You don't have to qualify. All you have to do is say yes and be willing to go. It's my prayer for you. My prayer for you is this ancient Jewish saying. I'm going to put it on the screen again. Go ahead and put it up there, please. May you follow the rabbi, capital R, that's Jesus Christ. May you follow the rabbi so closely that you end up covered with the dust of his feet. Friends, there's no greater honor. Would you pray, please, with me? Father in heaven, I don't know most of these people, but you do. And I'm so thankful that you walked down my beach and looked at me and asked me to follow you. And I'm so grateful, God, that you do the same thing for each person in this room, regardless of whether or not we qualify. I'm so grateful for that. And I pray that everyone in this room, even right now, would respond to you by dropping everything symbolically, dropping everything and saying yes to you. And I pray in Jesus' name, amen.